I have to tell you, I am so excited because you have interviewed so many people, and I am so honored to be the one to actually interview you to learn more about, Peter Dobias, the person who's done so much and has helped so many pets. So I'm really excited about this conversation, and I thank you for inviting me to do this. It truly is an honor. So thank you.
I feel like I'm feeling exactly the same way. It's almost like you're speaking from my heart because you have made so much difference, not only to my dog, but thousands and tens of thousands of dog lovers and their dogs and pets in general. And I love working with you and being with you because you're so open-minded and you're always so full of enthusiasm and just, it's just been joy. Like every time I see your face, I feel like smiling. So,
Same here. Same here. I truly enjoy our friendship. So you ready to get started? Because I have lots of questions to ask you.
oh, yeah, I guess so. Let's see where it takes us.
So I figure, a lot of people have listened to a lot of your podcasts and they hear you talked about other people, but I want to get into who Peter Dobias was from the very beginning. So can you tell me, the veterinarians that come from the heart all have like that original, like, oh my God, this is what I want to do, connection with animals. What was your first connection like, Peter?
Well, the first connection with the animal world was through our dachshund. Her name was Gerda. We actually lived really nearby the German border, and for some reason, she had this very German name. She was my dad's favorite daughter, he said. He used to say. Actually, no, not really, but favorite child in a way, because she didn't complain. But she wasn't necessarily exactly the friendliest dog, right? She loved my dad, and dachshunds are not exactly into kids, and she used to kind of bite us when, if we were noisy and rambunctious and so on. And she didn't let us go to her puppies. She had puppies twice. So the introduction to the animal world wasn't exactly the smoothest. But then living behind the Iron Curtain in the Eastern Bloc, everything was government owned. So my parents, they were busy and working. They decided that my sister and I, we were about 10 and 11, would be signed up to a riding club. And the riding club would be like $1 every 6 months, and you could ride as much as you wanted, but also you had to work a lot and, muck the stables and do all that. And as a teenager, or kind of almost teenager, I fell in love with a horse. Her name was Alpha. And she wasn't anywhere close to being Alpha, but she was an amazing horse. Like, she was just incredible. And unfortunately, she had tendinitis. And when I started watching her kind of going through the kind of like chronic tendinitis spells and limping and feeling super helpless, I made this strange wish for her to be sold to private hands, because I thought that that's the only way she would not need to limp in the ring for all these kids and everyone who rode her. So it was kind of like, it broke my heart, but somewhere there, I just basically made a wish for her to be sold. And I also decided to become a vet, because from helplessness, the seed of trying to help and trying to get more knowledge and ability to help is actually where it all came from. That's how it all started. And then my dad told me that I should be an architect and that I should not be a vet. He was a veterinarian and he didn't want me to be a vet. And I basically went in spite of his wishes and decided to be a vet. And I think I would be a very different person if I was an architect. I'd probably be a good architect, but I don't think I'd grow as much in the process.
Can I tell you something really weird?
Sure.
I wanted to be an architect, my choices, right? And my dad would not allow me to go to school to be an architect, because that was considered a man's job. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean,
we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's crazy.
As well. Like, you have to come to Prague, because Prague is such an architectural beauty. It's like, oh wow, yeah, you have to come.
That's so funny. Yeah,
I would love talk dogs and architecture, but we wouldn't have met if you went to architecture. So this is perfect.
That's very true. That's very true. All right, so you became a vet in 1988. That's a long time ago. What was like the most significant change you've seen in veterinary medicine since 1988?
I really feel that my veterinary progression has been a little bit of a roller coaster, and the state of medicine, veterinary medicine, has been also a roller coaster because initially I learned the conventional medicine practice and protocols, and we were taught that we have to follow certain cookbook approach to medicine. And then when I moved to Canada and I started practicing, I saw that it didn't really work. And, sometimes you give one dose of medication and you see the side effects. For me, one of the eye-opening experiences was treating a young dog that came with lameness. And I gave him an injection of NSAIDs, and 2 hours later, he was back vomiting pools of blood. So that was an eye-opening experience. And so I started kind of looking into holistic methods. I had some other cases that were really profound, like a dog that had chronic ear condition, and specialists said that he would have to go to surgery and have his ear canals removed. And we switched the dog to a raw diet on the recommendation of one of my friends who was just a dog lover. I said, why don't you switch the dog to raw food? And he was fine. 2 months later, he was absolutely fine. So I started looking into diet and holistic medicine, and studied homeopathy and looked into Chinese medicine and really embraced it. And then in practice, I realized that it's like trying to empty the ocean, that there would be like cases and cases coming with the same problems. And in 2008, pretty much on the verge of burnout, I decided that I would like to do some online work, share the information that I've learned with more people. And that's how it all started. And, I never stopped being excited. There have been challenging times, especially in the 2000s, like nobody was online and it was just really new and I had to learn everything. But it's been great to actually be part of the community of my colleagues and dog lovers together. And now I feel like I'm a little worried about the corporate nature of medicine, that, equity companies and investors are buying up veterinary clinics, and it has become, I believe, a little less or much less about the patients and more about the bottom line. And I don't really blame veterinarians, because those who have been in practice for 30, 40 years, they want to retire. And if there's a buyer, they just sell the clinic. But I'm sure that you've seen too that the corporate nature of medicine is really disrupting the mission of our profession, and it's just become a little bit of a roller coaster. So we have a real goal now to empower dog lovers and teach them as much as we can. And that's what you're doing as well. And I do my best to do as well, because that's where the future is. We can't always rely on someone else for creating health. We have to learn how to do that. So it's a fun job. It's great.
Yeah, I just heard a new statistic that almost 75% of specialty clinics are now owned by corporate.
Yes.
Which is crazy. People have to realize too that the cost of medicine is going up, not just because the kids coming out of school have $300,000 or $400,000 worth of debt. I have a vet friend who was just telling me she realized she was losing money in doing veterinary medicine, and I'm like, how can you be doing that? And she said,
Yes.
My office manager didn't tell me that everything has gotten so expensive that in the last year, one package of suture material has gone from between $3 to $4 to over $16.
Oh my goodness.
Right? And that's just one thing.
That is insane. That is
insane.
People misperceive veterinarians being these rich people who are rolling in money. And I think that's actually a real misperception. I know that the veterinary profession, and I had a clinic, once you stop selling or focusing on selling drugs and processed food, you basically make almost no money. And the stress and the level of challenges from, obviously managing the patients, then managing the clients and customers, making sure that you make them happy, then making sure that the business is supplied well and organized and so on, the team is happy and so on. And it's challenging. So everyone who has a good veterinarian on board, I'd say, tell them often that you appreciate them and make their job easier, as opposed to, being unreasonable. Sometimes people are unreasonable. Sometimes they're great. Most people are great, and there are a few people who, as you know, can make it really challenging. But that's also life. We can't expect going through life without a red light, right?
Right.
Or red lights.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I would tell people that once you find a good vet, be really good to them, because we have one of the highest suicide rates, right? And we try, I mean, and I tell the kids who ask, about going to veterinary medicine, I say, if you want to make money, go into human medicine. If it's what
Yeah.
really fills your cup and fills your heart, which is like you and me, do it, because you don't have to go to work every day. You get to go to work, and that changes everything in life.
I've been able to kind of I love to read self-help books and so on. And I thought, how could I share the information freely? I created Greenman and I started seeing some amazing results. And then I thought, okay, I may as well just kind of keep going. And it was really interesting to see how many changes you see when you start giving the body the building blocks that it needs. And it's not any different than having tomatoes in the garden and recognizing which ones get nutrients and which ones don't, right? So for me, it was a no-brainer, but it also allowed me and helped me to kind of finance this health information for everyone who needs it. 90% of the people who contact us or email us, they never buy anything, and we still give them the support because we can. And it just kind of it's really a nice feeling to be able to figure it out and not feeling like every day is a struggle, and you can do that. So
Right. All right. So let's get into a little bit of nutrition and that kind of stuff. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
I hear you talk all the time about detox, nourish, and reset as your pillars of health. Can you explain that more for everyone listening?
Yeah, it's almost like when you observe the healing process and the health creation process, it's really not much different than what nature does, because what nature does through all the processes, it basically gets rid of toxins and impurities through bacteria and, solar power and water and sand and all that. It's all purification. But then there's an amazing kind of cycle of nutrients where the nutrients fall to the ground and they get recycled, right? So nature does an amazing job in nourishing. And then, everything kind of resets once in a while, whether it's through seasons or through rain or through just kind of cyclic nature of the natural processes. And when I started kind of looking at all the different conditions that I treated, I started to see the same similarity, that I can either add foreign toxic substances like drugs, or I can actually help the body to go through the natural process of resetting. And I'm a little bit of a nerd. I think that you're like that too. And I like to see our dogs or our bodies in kind of like energy particle detail, where, if you look at my head or my hands, they're just basically, anatomically correct, I hope, parts. But when you dive deeper, you have the energy particles like the atoms and electrons and protons. And if I take the glasses off, they're made of the same stuff. So what is the difference between the body and the glasses? Well, it's only the constellation of the energy particles. And when you look at health, that's the optimal constellation of the energy particles. And if you add something else that is foreign, you're basically changing the constellation. So there's always a payoff for adding, let's say, a medication or doing radiotherapy or something like that. So, when I looked at all the different cases and treatments, it really has to start with detox and getting rid of what you don't need. It's almost like cleaning your basement, making sure that you get rid of the junk. And then you can provide the building blocks and nutrients. And everyone understands that garden needs nutrients and the tomatoes wouldn't grow. And you see a house plant and you go, yeah, this house plant needs to be watered and it needs nutrients and minerals and so on. But we somehow forget that our food and our nutrients are no longer what they used to be 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And that we overuse soils and we transport food and the nutrients don't get back to soil and it's unsustainable to supplement them back in the soil. So nourishing is super important. And I'm a big believer in providing the right nutrients, because you cannot grow tomato without the right nutrients. You cannot build a bike without the right nutrients. And there's 37, I believe, 1,000 billion chemical reactions happening in the body every second.
Wow.
So when you look at that, and when there is something missing, obviously the body can cope and kind of replace and, substitute to a certain point, but then it kind of breaks down. And I get often quite frustrated when I see my friends or their dogs having health problems, and I can ask them, are you giving omegas or do you provide
Oh, yeah.
minerals? And they, oh, no, I don't believe in that. And for me, I've seen such mind-opening transformations, and my patients and clients have seen the same, that for me, it's like a no-brainer. And at the same time, I realize that not everyone has that level or opportunity to see it and understand it. So I keep going, but that's the nourish part. So it's detox and nourish, and then alignment. And you're all about alignment and resetting the body and the muscles and the spine and the back and so on. And obviously, I don't need to tell you that the spine is an energy channel that is super important. It's like the energy highway, and it needs to be aligned. And the muscles are conduits and metabolic organs. If they're not in a good shape, then it's a problem. And yeah, so that's that part, the align. And then I have two more steps. One of them is healthy hormones for metabolic function and so on. And I've learned through my dog packs that that's super important. I'm very passionate about hormone replacement therapy for dogs and hormone replacement therapy for male and female dogs, and hormone-sparing sterilization for dogs in general or pets, because that's always much better way to. And we don't need to go into that deeper. Anyone who wants to learn can go to my website at peterdobias.com and look for the articles and the summary of this particular issue.
Well, and I can tell you for sure, working with a whole bunch of the police dogs, that all of the police dogs that I've ever worked with are left intact. And they've done it not because somebody said something, but because they tried working with intact and sterilized and found that the intact dogs were better working dogs, right? It's healthier. It just is.
It just is, when they lose muscles, that's one issue, but also the luteinizing hormone that elevates dramatically after they're spayed or neutered creates inflammation in different areas of the body. And we now know that it's linked to ligament tears and hip dysplasia and injuries and behavior changes, organ disease, cancer. It's kind of mind-blowing. And I've become really passionate about trying to share this information with people, because my dog Pax couldn't really move well and was limping for 2 years. And you were the one who helped him with laser therapy and coaching us. And I'm very grateful. But we also did HRT on top of that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Combining all the different methods is really fantastic. And I'm grateful that you were open-minded to kind of like do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's great. I mean, you being the veterinarian and Dean being the physical therapist set it so well up to be able to understand how to help him the best, understanding the whole body. It's a great team.
Yeah, but at the same time, being in pretty much the same situation as I was when I was growing up, and I had my limping horse and I could not figure it out, and basically taking a quite non-traditional route to help Pax. And then eventually, after 2.5 years, solving it was like the best. And even better, that now I can actually share the information with others. But, you face the barriers because you share the information with others, and then people tell you, well, I think I'm going to spay my dog the conventional way because my doctor says so, and so on. And then you get really frustrated because it's like, now I see conventional spay and neuter, the non-sparing one, similar to amputating your dog's leg if it needs to, just to prevent fractures, right? Like it's like it doesn't make sense. So my dog may break a leg, so I'm gonna amputate it. So, people are worried about other dogs being attracted to female that is still ovaries, and they would say, well, I don't want that, so I'm gonna spay them and cause other problems, right? So is frustration an engine for you as well of kind of like moving forward, or is it just?
Oh, yeah.
Are you just?
Well, I mean, it's the obstacles that make us learn, right?
Yeah. And for me, it's like the obstacles and the learning, and also the frustration of why is it not different? Like after all those years.
Well, and, one of the things I always teach my interns and my students is, remember, you have DVM after your name, not GOD. You can't change everything. Right? And every person is a product of their own experiences. So all you can do is give them the education and then let them make informed decisions. And you can't get mad at them, or you can't get mad at a feral cat for biting you if you stick your finger in the cage, right? because it's just who they are and what they do, right? So you can take these people and give them all the information you can, and they may still make a decision that you might not agree with, yet they're the
Absolutely.
animal's advocate. And we have to be happy with, if we give all the information, we've done our part, and that's all we can do. And that's how we can sleep at night.
I think that we just have to move veterinary medicine in 2025 and make computer games and all that. Like, your dog was neutered the wrong way, minus 500 points.
Gamify
You're a winner.
veterinary medicine.
Your dog went through hormone-sparing sterilization. It's funny how the human mind works. And I totally agree with you. You can't really do anything else than share the information, but there are different ways of sharing it, right? And if we constantly search for the best way to share it and have empathy with others and not to be arrogant about the knowledge that we sometimes accidentally acquired, then it goes better. And be curious, naturally curious and open-minded, right? And just
Absolutely.
red lights happen
Absolutely.
in life.
All right. So I have another nutrition question for you. What kind of information can you give to pet parents about your knowledge of nutrition changing disease processes or preventing disease processes?
Wow. Do we still have to have that conversation in 2025? It's almost like, I really like the question, but, I was very sincere when I go like, for 20, 30 years, we are still having the conversation about whether processed food is good for dogs or not, and how much. And I know that it's sometimes a matter of cost and budgetary limitations, but I think that food is the best way to actually save on veterinary care, and mostly the best way to extend our dog's life. Food is truly the best medicine, and you can pretty much go on 5 dozens of podcasts on healthy diet for dogs and humans, and you will just kind of hear the same thing. It's a wholesome food, fresh food, either cooked or raw, with variety, and making sure that you read actually pet food labels as well. And when there is like cellulose, that it equals wood chips, and if there is rendered fat, it really is rendered fat, and meat byproducts is nothing that you want to see even and feed your dog. There are a few initial steps with almost any disease that I treat, and one of them is diet, like healthy diet. If a human wants to go to McDonald's and wants to prevent, obesity or digestive issues or cardiac disease, that would be a little bit of a problem. So start with that in dogs as well. And then you just you start with the basics, and then you go from there. It's not really that difficult. People sometimes obsess about measuring every single milligram of vitamins and food and exact recipes and all that. And ultimately, nature has invented a perfect system. You offer a variety of nutrients, and if the nutrients are missing in the food, you provide the supplements, and then you're much more likely to create health. If you feed food that sits on the shelf for 6 months or 12 months, and then you feed it to your dog, how can it be healthy? Rancid fats and ingredients that are definitely not anything that I would feed my dog. But, if you can't feed fully, completely homemade diet for whatever reason, or packaged frozen food, try to supplement. And, I often, and use your common sense. Like, there's one example of this. We give horses salt licks and deer salt licks and all those. And
goats.
Then we say goats. And then we say absolutely zero salt to our dogs. Like, where did it come from? Like, does it really make sense? Is there any scientific basis for that? Or is it just an invention of a pet food company that wanted us to stop feeding any human healthy leftovers to our dogs and give their crap? Pardon my language, but that's what it is in most situations. Yeah, we could go about diet forever. I am big on the essential nutrients. I call them fabulous four, meaning minerals and amino acids, then vitamins, then probiotics and omega oils. And then obviously with mobility, we need to support our joints and muscles for recovery, and detox once in a while. So, I go on detox for a week every month. And part of it is a fermented product with milk thistle and other components that actually allow me to kind of optimize my body. I'm discovering in the process of doing these detoxes and so on, I go, okay, my nose was congested before I started, but now it's not. Or, I had an achy shoulder, but now when I take omegas, suddenly it's not achy anymore. I make myself a guinea pig in nutrition.
Uh-huh.
I sometimes fail. I love chocolate, but I eat good quality chocolate. Try not to eat sugar because we know how damaging it is to our metabolic
Mm-hmm.
needs and how our body works. The same for our dogs. Carbohydrates, reduce it. Feed it with protein. And, I always tell people, don't feed your dog pasta and rice. Like, that's not really okay. It doesn't really help them. It creates these metabolic or sugar spikes. And we know that the glucose curve and the sudden rises in glucose actually contribute to cancer formation and organ disease and metabolic syndrome. We go forever.
So let's take it from nutrition to supplements. You have your own supplement company. Everyone knows that. What inspired you to create that?
I actually really I'm grateful to one of my clients and also natural pet food manufacturers, Debbie Benson from Vancouver, because she in 2010 or 11 came to me and said, some dogs can't eat bones and I don't want to give bone meal because it's full of toxins and heavy metals. And I needed to create something. And so that's when I started kind of diving into creating green mint, mineral and amino acid support. But, if I look back, like even as a 19, 20-year-old kid, I had allergies and I started books on microbiotics and I was very interested in nutrition. So it was just a natural progression. And since then we have, a couple of dozens of different products. And for me, it's been an eye-opening experience. The first thing that I actually realized that not all products and supplements are made equal. Many of them on the market are made in China. They're packaged in plastic and the microplastic and everything goes in the supplements as well because, it's sitting there. Second, that fermentation can increase the bioavailability 7 to 10 times. And that is another kind of eye-opening realization. I usually, when I come up with formulas and just I obsess about them, sometimes for years before I launch the product or supplement. But I usually test the products on myself and then on my human family and then on my dogs and then friends' dogs. And then we kind of, we launch them. But most of them have been a really nice surprise because I never expected that nutrition and supplementation can make as much difference as they do. And, the last one, mobility support, obviously there's sometimes personal motivation as well. With packs being lame, like I'm thinking, okay, now or never, like I have to launch it. And mobility support, joint powder and joint butter, where like I really didn't feel like I wanted to launch them until I have it dialed. And then I had to launch them because Pax was not well and I felt, okay, it's time. And interestingly enough, at the same time when Pax was limping, I came up with really serious shoulder capsulitis and I stopped swimming. So once again, like I started taking joint butter and, 9 months later, I have full range of motion and I also have been using your laser. So not really necessarily saying that if you do supplements, you should stop everything else. But yeah, it's just like having that personal experience. And I believe in not too much, but also some people, I often hear it like, I take so many pills and I don't want to take more pills. People mistake good quality supplements with drugs. They see a capsule or a pill or powder and they think it's a drug. But I see it as concentrated nutrients. I see it as the smorgasbord of nutrients that are offered to the body and the body sorts it out. And there are very few nutrients that you can really offer in abundance and let the body sort it out. And, the requirements of different nutrients are different at different time, depending how much your dog is active, as you know, or, what their life stage is and all that. So offering them that is super important. And I've seen, people can just go and read the stories on my website. It's been just so good to actually feel that I can be useful in one way or another. So yeah, that's how it all started. And I just see where it takes me. And my team is amazing as well. And my colleagues like you. It's nice to hang out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know I can tell you that I take probably between 20 and 30 pills, capsules, tablets, whatever they are, a day. And you go, oh my God, that's so much. And I'm almost 60 years old. And I go to the doctor and they say, well, who's your pharmacy? And I can say, I don't have one because I'm on zero
I
drugs.
love it.
And they're
I
like,
love it.
what?
Yeah.
Right? So I agree with you 100%. So you've got all these supplements, and I know that you have really good ones, but can
Thank
you
you.
explain? Yeah, no, absolutely. Sid had joint butter this morning. That's in his
That's
rotation.
nice.
So yeah, that's awesome. Can you tell everybody what makes your supplements different than everything else out there?
I'm very obsessive about the formulas themselves. So I base my formulas on not only clinical practice, but also research, and also work with formulators, with master formulators. So that's number one. Second, most of our products are fermented, and fermentation increases the bioavailability, absorption, and the effect of the ingredients about 7 to 10 times based on research. So that's the next one. We package them in glass. So we make sure that we are not environmentally friendly, but also the powders and the capsules are not in touch with plastic. We even have plastic lids. We ship them without any plastic bubble wrap and so on. We have these eco sleeves.
Oh, so hold on for a second. You said you have plastic lids, but you have metal lids.
Oh, did I say plastic
Yeah.
lids? We don't have plastic lids. Pardon.
Got it.
I have no idea how that happened. They're made in the United States, most of them, and our omega oil is from Norway. So I really make sure that the ingredients are high quality. We do quality control. We manufacture in human facilities. We now have a human line and the animal line because our dog lovers were taking the dog products because they started seeing so much difference. So I eventually just said, okay, it's time to launch the human line. And I have human formulators who help me with that. But the basis is very similar. And I usually start with the formulas and then we kind of consult with them as well. We don't source any ingredients from China just because there have been so many scandals and issues with ingredients from that country, especially. And the other thing is, like, we are not a company that is owned by equity, or we don't have shareholders who would be pushing me to, cut
Find
down the
cheaper
cost
ingredients.
and so on.
Right.
So we can just basically make it as good as possible for everyone. And, I take them, my dogs take them, but that's not the most important part. I really feel that working with integrity is not always the easiest route, but it's the most reliable long-term route. And that's how you can make the most difference. And I can sleep well at night. And it's just really, it's been a great journey. One more thing about our supplements, we don't really sell them in retail. So again, like, instead of making the price super, super high, because we really go for fermentation, which makes it more expensive to make, and high quality ingredients and glass packaging and all that stuff. So we sell directly online. And just recently we made the decision to stop selling on Amazon because, Amazon takes cuts and so on, and we would have to increase the prices. So we try to keep them as affordable as possible with not compromising the quality. It's been a learning journey as well for me as a vet to become a person who needs to kind of, build a team and solve all these different challenges. It's fun most of the time, and sometimes it's not, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's all learning, right? Learn and grow,
Yeah.
baby. Learn and grow. All right, can I ask about two in particular? Can you explain how, like, joint powder or Feel Good Omega contribute to a dog's overall health? So say, like, Sid is turning 8 soon. I know that he's on omegas and things for his joints because I feel that's important. But for somebody who's like, but my dog's healthy, why would I give him this?
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
I love prevention, and prevention is the best medicine. In medicine, we are quite reactive often, or most of the time we are reactive. When there is a problem, people come and we try to help them and their dogs and go from there. I start with omegas very, very early, pretty much like as soon as I give puppies food, they get omegas. And they're obviously very important for tissue development, brain development, nerve development, but also cell repair. They have anti-inflammatory properties, and we know that inflammation is at the core of issues, injuries, chronic disease, and all that. Middle-aged animals for sure should get omega in higher amounts that we thought originally. I recommend for middle-sized dogs get maybe 1 gram of omega-3s a day. I take about 3 grams because I'm an older dog. I just celebrated 61. And senior dogs, the anti-inflammatory effect and the regeneration effect, and also the effect on cognition and brain health and so on are super important. Any dog should be on omega oils, but also make sure that they're actually good quality omegas, because we have issues with heavy metals. We have issues with unsustainable sources such as fish or krill. Some of the sources like algae oils are GMO. So when I was looking for omegas, I decided for squid or calamari, mainly because it's low on the food chain and it's rising in population because the fish that eats calamari or squid population is declining. So that's why we chose squid. And it's also low in mercury and tested mercury free. So yeah, omegas, absolute no-brainer. When it comes to mobility support, every mobility support will have the glucosamine and chondroitin and MSM, like that's without saying. We have about 13 different fermented ingredients. One of them is pernamuscle, which is relatively common, but also some other ingredients like rutin and boswellia and quercetin, which are anti-inflammatory. Then we put I believe that there is barley grass, and there's some other ingredients. Now, when I'm talking about them, I can't remember all 13, but you can look at the formulas. And we've had, initially we decided that we will put joint butter in a blend of coconut oil and olive oil, all the ingredients, because we know that it actually can be beneficial. But then we had some dogs actually refusing to eat it because the flavor was too strong. So we created immediately, within 2 months after launching joint butter, we created joint powder for dogs. And that has been a bestseller, and people really love it, and dogs love it too. So we also kind of adjust. If something doesn't work perfectly, we just kind of listen to our customers and listen to dogs and then make adjustments. So it became joint powder for dogs and joint butter for people now. So we have two. And I'm taking joint butter religiously. And I have to say, I thought that I would be moving much worse at 61 than I am. I go to the gym and I do yoga and try to strengthen and all that. And I'm very grateful. I'm not really sure whether I should take all the credit for the formulas and the supplements. I think that dogs taught me tons. My clients taught me tons. It's like living many lives in one. You know what I mean? Like when you face your clients, when you talk to them, they share their stories and their injuries and so on. And you kind of look at that. And we have plenty of learning material on our own as well. Knowing what it is when we can't move. And mobility is so important, as you know, because mobility issues are the number one cause why we have to say goodbye to our dogs. And so I thank you again for doing the work that you do. I'm complimenting a little bit, but yeah, I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what you do. I mean, your brain and your heart really come through, and they help so many animals. So that's awesome. So of all of your products that you have, do you have a favorite, and why?
It's like saying that, if someone asks you, do you have a favorite child? Because it's like, how can you replace minerals with omegas or vitamins with probiotics or mobility for liver glands? Like you just can't. There's one child that is kind of like the Cinderella of all that, and it is skin spray. And it's not necessarily a supplement, but my grandfather was a herbalist, not my dad's dad, but my mother's dad. And when I was a kid, we used to go collect herbs, and
Cool.
he dried them, and I would wake up during holiday time in the summer. I would wake up in bedroom full of herbs. And my grandfather taught me how to know what the herbs are good for and which ones are used in drugs. Like imagine that drug companies those days were using herbs and plants.
Oh, yeah.
And so we would be collecting them, and then he would send them to someone who would basically purchase them, and then they would make medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Strange time, right? No chemicals.
Yeah.
Or very little. But when I was in practice and when I had my clinic, obviously there's a lot of injuries and dog bites and cuts and so on and incisions. And I didn't really like the idea of putting chemical solutions that are toxic to bacteria to put it on the wound, because I was thinking if it's toxic to bacteria, it must be toxic to the cells of skin. And then I had one situation where I had a patient and he was neutered, and I gave my client solution of ibetane soap, which is chlorhexidine. And I would tell her to basically dilute it and clean the incision. And she misunderstood. And she poured the soap on undiluted. And 2 weeks later, I would remove the stitches and the wound did. And it basically didn't heal at all.
Oh, wow.
And it was a real eye-opening experience for me because I thought, okay, this is pretty clear that this solution is not really contributing to healing. It may kill the bacteria, but it's probably killing some of the cells that are supposed to heal the skin. So I formulated a solution, it was called healing spray in the past. But then the Canadian government told me that I can't call it healing spray because it's just that it's healing. So I call it skin spray. But skin spray, I'm super nervous if I travel and if I forget it at home because it's pretty much good for anything. Skin bites and stings and incisions and wounds and scrapes, all that. It helps healing. It reduces the pain. It reduces swelling. And I know that if I give someone a skin spray and say, if they have a cut or something, they will never stop using it. I had one neighbor who went through birth. And a few days later, I talked to her and, I was really happy to see her baby. And she confided to me that she had some challenges postpartum and that, things are not healing as well. So I gave her a bottle of skin spray and I got a text the next day. I was just so happy. And she said, what is this? Like, this is amazing. So it's probably one of the underappreciated product in our lineup because, I don't know, people just like to put polysporin on wounds and antibiotics and we have resistant infections and all that stuff or chemicals. We don't really think what it really does. We just automatically follow preconceived idea or protocols without really asking the questions. Is this really good for us? I love to challenge the status quo, even my own beliefs. Like does it sound okay still like 10 years later or not?
So now you have my curiosity totally up. What's in skin spray?
Calendula, yucca, golden seal, and witch hazel. And so calendula is known for healing wounds and incisions. The witch hazel is really interesting because it actually reduces the swelling and it actually, in my opinion, it reduces the pain and discomfort. Hydrustus is antibacterial and antiviral. And yucca is good for, again, healing and soothing and so on. So it's like, if I cut myself, like if I'm in the kitchen and get a little clumsy and cut myself, like I know that if I wash the wound just under a stream of water, dry it with a piece of gauze, and then I spray skin spray on, and then I put bandage or Band-Aid on it. I usually joke with my customers, I say, and then I saturate the Band-Aid with skin spray and do that 3 times a day or 4 times a day. It really heals beautifully, but also it doesn't hurt. And that's the good part. One time in the kitchen again, I dropped a knife on my foot and it just it stabbed me in the foot and I had And so what I did, I bandaged the bruise, like the wound, and I saturated with the skin spray, but there was part of the bruise that was outside of it. And so then a couple of days later, I took the bandage off and I virtually had a bruise outside of that contact with skin spray and no bruise underneath. I wish I had pictures actually, but it's just, I'm not always really good in documenting all this stuff. I'd love to be a researcher if I didn't need to sit in a lab and if I could just participate in real life. So it's like, I've always been conflicted about that. I love research and I would like to do more, but it feels like the real help is needed, and that's where I want to be. So it's just like, do you like research?
I love reading research. I love coming up with ideas for research. I could never be the person that would be like, okay, let's take these 10 beagles and do blah, 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 and then cut them open. Couldn't do it. Could not do it.
No, I definitely not experiments with animals. When I applied to get to vet school or applied for vet school, the first year, I didn't get in the first year, so I applied for a job at the veterinary school. And I was working for a professor who did research in toxoplasmosis And I had to look after the lab rats and lab mice. And we even had rabbits and one horse. And it was just absolutely heartbreaking. Like, it was one of the most traumatic situations to see actually what happens to lab animals. So for everyone, choose products that are not tested on animals. It's so important. We have different methods now, tissues, and we can test differently, right? Yeah, research. And definitely no research on dogs. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I could not be the person to do it. I understand sometimes you have to test on animals before you test on humans and things like
Yeah.
that, but it's the same way I can't eat bacon and still have two pet pigs, right?
Yeah. No, I totally understand. I actually don't eat meat. I feed meat to pack, but the only time I eat meat is when it's like an invasive deer here on Maui. We have total overpopulation of deer and some hunters, so that's the only occasion. Okay, we're free and running around, so that's okay. But,
Yep.
yeah.
So, we just came out with our cranial cruciate ligament courses for the veterinary professionals. And I know that you know a lot about cranial cruciate injuries and things like that. Can you tell me your idea on a nutritional approach to prevent, or if somebody has a dog with a CCL injury, how can they support them through recovery?
Yeah, cranial cruciate
Right.
ligaments. It starts early, right? Like, it starts even before those puppies are born. Ideally, if the mother is nourished well, then puppies will develop. Obviously, genetics play a role as well, and you're probably a better person to explain that. The first really key step is to feed wholesome diet, natural diet. Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib wrote an amazing book. She's called The Forever Dog Life, and that's a book of recipes and so on. Then the next step is to really preserve hormones, because we now know that preserving our dog's sex hormones will actually reduce the chances of cruciate ligament tear dramatically. And there has been direct link to neutering and cruciate ligament tears and spaying and cruciate ligament tears. The research that has been done by Dr. Michelle Kutzler and some other researchers shows that after neutering, luteinizing hormone elevates. It latches onto the receptors in the knee, creates inflammation and gradual tears. Obviously, the next one, and again, you're a better person, but I'll just kind of repeat what you have said many times. Exercise, balance exercise, not overdoing things, not injuring our dogs by taking them on a bike ride, right? Or something like that. It's just not necessary, but really try to mimic the movement that they would do in nature, they would go through. And then mobility support, omega oils from start, building blocks, minerals, amino acids, all that. Reducing the immune system kind of burden by really minimizing vaccines. I'm not necessarily saying do not vaccinate, but there are protocols that are safer and minimize vaccines so we don't stimulate or overburden the immune system, because we know that ligament tears also happens due to inflammation that is at least partially immune mediated to a certain degree. When our dogs kind of reach the middle age, definitely mobility support and making sure that we look after their joints and again provide the building blocks. And that's pretty much it. And strengthening. How could I forget strengthening? Because without strengthening, we can't really maintain healthy tissues and strong tissues and ligaments, right? So it's balancing. And I would recommend anyone to take your courses, because I've taken some and they're amazing. And I love not only the material, but also the passion that you exude every single part of your courses. So,
all right. If you could give pet owners one piece of advice from your heart, from your mind, and from everything you know, what would it be?
that is the hardest question. I'm so unprepared, because there's at least 3 or 4 pieces, but what would it be? Our dogs are the best gift that we could ever get. We should treat them that way. We should help them as much as we can, because they're such great helpers. And we need to empower ourselves and learn and continue learning how to keep them healthy and living for many summers to come. Because there's only a limited number of summers that we have with them. And the relationship is so special that the best thing we can do is to be there for them and go with our heart and not with anything else.
Great. That's a great piece of wisdom.
Came from my dog, Pax. He just downloaded it.
Yeah. He's a wise dog then.
Yeah, he's naughty slash wise. Like I can see that he's very wise, but oh my goodness, he's got his. I've never seen a border collie that would be so independent and so happy. I should actually show you the videos of him before we finish because he's such a monkey. Let me just see if I can find it on my phone.
Well, and he's a border collie. He's going to try to outthink you and outdo you
Really, you know,
because they're so smart.
yeah, actually, this one is pretty good. Huh? Huh? Okay.
Oh, wow. Look at him playing in the water. That is awesome.
Ah,
Oh my God. He looks so happy. Look at that extension.
yeah, no, it's just like he's just like if you look from the start. No, he's just like
So happy.
just going. And so I give him. He now knows that 15 minutes of this and 15 minutes rest, and we do it 3 times, and that's it.
Awesome. Awesome.
Because he's
That
like,
is great.
yeah. It's
Well,
like,
and water is 60 times more resistant than air. So him running through water is a great exercise.
well, I'll show you our underwater treadmill just so you know that we are following Auntie Laurie's instructions. Obviously you'll see him from.
There you go.
He's basically doing this like he's basically.
That's perfect.
Yeah, no,
That's
no.
awesome.
So we go to this riverbed and we hike up and then we hike down and then he tries to rescue me when I go swimming. And of course, he's very annoying because he's very loud and he barks and circles me, right? Like he tries to herd me back to the shore. But
Aw.
then at certain point, he actually gives up on me. He goes, okay, you want to drown? I'll go running.
He said, I did my job. Now it's up to
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Peter, so much for giving me this opportunity to actually ask you questions so everybody can learn more about you, what makes you tick, what has happened in your life to bring you to where you are, and about all the really cool things that you can share with people.
Laurie, thank you so much for having me and having a chat. Like I thrive on good conversations, and I feel like we're like-minded spirits and souls, and always excited about talking to you and learning from you. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night.